So is that going to be an inflow or an outflow? Well, it's a decrease in what? It's a decrease in expenses, which is essentially an inflow, right? 92.4?
93,480.
93,480. So that's going to be the change in my water bill on an annual basis.
Right.
And I think this gray water recycling system, it's probably like hydroponics, which is a living gray water recycling, so you have to replant every 3 years. We do it with our wastewater treatment plant with the poplar trees down here on the Clark Fork, don't we? So it naturally processes our waste. What's the factor?
33.
No.
2.487.
Where'd we get that? Is that from the annuity table or the lump sum table?
Annuity.
So let's just make sure this is a critical piece. Obviously, everybody needs to be able to find the number. So we're on page 628. The I is 10%, so I go across to 10%. It's 3 years, 2.487. If it's an annuity, you guys, that means it's happening every year. So that's going to be, always be a number over 1.0. On the other table, obviously the numbers are going to be way smaller because you're only putting the money in once. So 10%, 3 years. So what does that end up being for my NPV then?
232,485.
Could somebody explain to somebody that doesn't know anything about this what that 232,485 is? Can somebody explain to Gretchen?
Because I missed that. I will try. Okay, give it a whirl.
Give it a whirl.
Okay, so what that means is every year you're going to save 93,480 on your water bill. But in 3 years, because it's every year, that 93,000 isn't valued at 93,000 next year because the time value of money says that it's worth less. So instead of saying 93,480 times 3 for 3 years,
Exactly.
it's going to be something less than 3 because it's not worth that amount in 3 years.
Excellent explanation. Excellent explanation. This number, this factor, is what takes that 93 grand every year for 3 years and pulls it back to what? Today's dollars. That's very good. That's exactly what it is. And the erroneous thing that people do is take something like that and multiply by 3 and compare it to the 150 you spend a day. Well, you can't do that. Right?
If you're ever 60, you can teach them.
Because 93 grand in 3 years is not the same as 93 grand a day.
Is your net present value like the total amount that you'll save over 3 years?
Well, we haven't got there yet. We're going to add this all up, and this bottom number is going to be the net present value of the project.
Okay, but the 232 isn't 93,480 times 3 for all 3 years.
No, it's 93,480 times some number smaller than 3
Because the value of that money.
because of the value of the money. I took the 114,000, which is my annual water bill, and I said it was going to go down by 82%. So it's 114 times 0.82. Okay, tax savings. Heck do I do that?
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to explain this one.
Oh, come on, you guys can do this. How much am I depreciating it a year?
90,000.
50 grand, 150 divided by 3. So is that how much I save on my tax bill?
No.
How come? Is it a credit or a deduction? It's a deduction. So a deduction is as valuable as the amount of the write-off times what?
The tax rate?
Your tax rate.
So it's literally 50,000 times the 15%?
Yeah,
Okay, so I did it right.
yeah, that's it.
You're so smart.
No, 7,500. Isn't it 7,500, 50,000?
500, yeah.
Yeah. I told you.
Oh, I was
Did
here.
you write it down right
I
there?
apologize.
Did you write it down?
Tax rate is 15%.
Oh, you didn't, see right here.
If
Sorry,
somebody,
much
so,
appreciated
so
for salvage.
pull this together then, so if somebody's in a really high tax bracket, is that write-off more or less valuable to them? More. If you have no taxes, like you're zero because you have no taxable income, is that write-off valuable to you at all? No, it's worth zero. So what did we just say, 7,500? Is that every year? Is it an annuity or a lump sum? It's an annuity. Is that going to be an inflow or an outflow? Why?
Because it's a decrease and an outflow.
It's a decrease in my tax bill.
Would it change from year to year if the tax codes change?
Sure, clearly.
So you have to adjust that.
And here's the thing, if an annuity, if you have something that changes every year, is that an annuity?
No.
Why not?
Because it's different.
An annuity has to be the same payment. So if I thought, great example, to bring home a point, if I thought in year 2 that my tax rate was going to go up to 25%, and in year 3 my tax rate was going up to 39.6, it would be 3 lump sums. Year 1, my tax savings is X. Year 2, my tax savings is Y. Year 3, my tax savings is Z. So then I would have 3 lump sums, wouldn't I? I wouldn't have an annuity because an annuity by nature has to be similar periodic payments. So 7,500, I've got the same factor here, obviously. How much is my
18,653.
So what's the net present value of my project?
101, 138.
Yep. So explain that number. What's that mean?
That means that you should invest in this water treatment thing, or this, yes, you should.
Yeah, at 10%.
You're gonna make back your money plus $1,000
At 10%, I'm covering my cost of capital
in property management.
and yielding $101,000, $138. No brainer. Huh? Inflow. What NPV tells us is that if this number is anything greater than 0, you invest in the project because you've covered your cost of capital. So let's go back full circle now to what we're actually talking about, which is capital budgeting can be used to do quite a few things, can't it? It can just be used to just do a straight up, do I accept it or not accept it? In this case, obviously, you accept it. The number's greater than 0. If I had 4 different providers giving me different hydroponics and different, maybe a barrel system and maybe a manual system, and they all had different costs, different depreciation, different change in my water bill, different lives, I would run this for all of them and then use these numbers to prioritize them, wouldn't I? Can you only look at the numbers? What if I had an 18-year project that yielded me 110? Would I choose that over this 3-year that yields me 101?
No.
Why not?
3 years is way better.
Why not? Exactly, that's the word right there. The risk is in that elongated time frame. The risk, the differential in the yield is not enough to take on another 15 years of risk. Okay. Let's try another one.
Like, if the gain was only, like 5,000, and you had to put in like $1 million, would you still want to? I mean,
Well,
the time frame was like, I don't know, 10 years.
That's a really good question. I mean, obviously you've got to get to at least 0 to cover your cost of capital. Then the question becomes one of strategy. The example I gave here was a water treatment plant in California. That's like a no-brainer. You've got to get that system in shop, in-house, figure out how to make it work for your business because, let's be honest, you're not going to have any water in 10 years. So, but if it was something a lot less controversial, like, oh, I'm thinking about going roboticizing something that used to be done manually by laborers. So now I'm going to get rid of all these people, all those personnel issues are going to go away. I'm just going to have a nice machine that operates. So then you've got all that qualitative stuff. And then I probably am going to lose my HR department too, and that's going to be more cost savings. And, da-da-da-da-da.
Then everybody's gonna eat you because you hired them.
Or like, did you guys see the guy in Seattle that makes the chips? His company makes the chips for computer cards. And he made a couple $1 million a year, young guy entrepreneur. And all of his workers made like 30 or 40 grand a year. And he made the decision to put everybody to a minimum wage of $70,000 because that's the number that research tells us past which you don't get by any more happiness. So basically the number in America is $70,000, meets all your needs. You have disposable income. You don't have any financial worries. Past that, making more money doesn't do an ounce for your happiness. So he put everybody up to 70 grand and took the cut out of his own salary.
Yeah.
So there, huh?
Yep, he's not.
No, he's not. I just read an article in Ink on him.
I just read it too, that he's not doing very well.
Oh, you're kidding. I just read an article in Ink that said his company's thriving.
The company might be, but I don't think he's.
Nuh-uh. I mean, I literally just read the article in Ink, huh?
Guys,
Will you find that for me and send it to me?
he,
What's the dude's name?
I have no idea, but I just remember he was a young dude.
Yeah, and he makes chips for computers for
Losing all of his employees because, I mean, veteran employees are getting paid the same as
yeah, they were all mad.
newcomers, so they're kind of pissed off. But
Yeah. the second
yeah,
year-
wage compression is a big issue in those kinds of situations, isn't it?
the second
Huh?
year-
But I just find that interesting because I literally just read the Ink, which is, corporate pop news, I guess. Okay. Blake and Gwen are together. Did you see that?
I do.
Blake Shelton. Okay. I just saw that on my little pop fix this morning. Okay, so here's another example. I am considering buying a machine today. For $30,000. It's a router, and it's going to increase my production. To meet my increased sales demand. Of $26,000 a year. Oh, yeah, can you turn the lights off, Jess? Thanks. My variable costs are $1 per unit. My fixed costs are $2,000 a year. Salvage value on the router. In other words, what do I think it's going to be worth at the end of its life? $6,000. And I think it's got a 3-year life. You have to ask me one more question.
What's your interest rate? Yeah,
Perry, I got more than one.
exactly.
What's how much my cost of capital? And tell me again what I'm looking at when I tell you that number. The cost of what to me for my company? What is my cost of capital? My interest on the money that I'm borrowing and any. Do companies just get money by borrowing it?
Stocks and bonds.
Stocks and bonds. So if I'm going to issue more stock, what's the dividend rate? If I'm going to borrow it, what's my interest? And then you do a weighted capital of it. So my cost of capital is 9%. And and it's going to increase my sales 8,000 units per year. Okay, set up your table. Same 5 columns as we did yesterday. So should we do those together? What do you think we need to know? Right, but let's do the column headings.
The description, years, investigation, deduction, depreciation.
A description, what is the cash flow we're talking about? What's next? Yeah, time. Okay. Always easy to start. What do I have to do today? Write a check for 30,000 bucks. All right, so that's easy. Go ahead and set that up. Go ahead.
Okay, under Pep C, what is that word?
Can't read that? No. Incremental.
Incremental.
What does that mean, you guys? My fixed costs are it's an incremental 2,000 bucks a year. Huh? It is an annuity for sure.
Because you will appreciate it 2,000.
Exactly. That router is going to generate additional fixed costs. So it's fixed costs that didn't exist without the router. It's not the depreciation. We've got to do that separate.
Okay.
These are the costs of running the machine. I've got to pay somebody $2,000 a year to come calibrate it. Okay. So description. Is the 30,000 a bracketed number or unbracketed? And what's the factor for anything that happens today? Today is today. $30,000 out the door today is the same as $30,000 out the door today. Aren't I clever? Okay. What else happens? My sales are going to go up. By how much? 8,000 units. How many dollars?
$26,000.
I think you've got to figure out, you've got to do a little calculation to figure out what my increased contribution margin is on an annual basis. So take a second and do that. Sales minus variable cost equals contribution margin. How much is my CM going to go up on an annual basis? Once you get how much your contribution margin is going up on an annual basis, what do you have to subtract from that? Your fixed costs. Good. So what you're working towards is, what is my annual cash flow going to look like from buying this machine? Anybody have a number? Perry, you're pretty close. 16 grand is correct. Kind of have to go do a little thing on the side. So my sales are going to go up by how much a year? My variable costs are going to be what a year? 8,000 units, buck a unit. What are my fixed costs annually? So what's my cash flow going to be impacted annually? 16 grand. Okay, you have, so then I'm just going to leave you to it. So 16 grand is correct. You need to figure out if you think that's an inflow or outflow. You need to figure out if it's an annuity or a lump sum. And you need to multiply it by the factor. Let me just finish talking and then I'll let you work. What's the third item that's going on your chart? Tax savings from depreciation. What do you want to ask me about that?
Your tax rate.
What's your tax rate? My tax rate is 25%. Lastly, what's the other piece? It's something new. What am I going to do with the router at the end of its life? I'm going to sell it. I'm going to sell it. So I want you to think about whether you think that's an annuity or a lump sum and present value that back. So you've got 4 lines on your chart, and you total them up and get me the NPV of the project. Don't forget to use salvage value in your depreciation calc.
So what's the last line gonna be called?
I think just selling router sale, or salvage value, or whatever. What did I say the tax rate was?
25%.
There you go, 4 lines. What are you investing now? What's your increased cash flow every year? What's your tax savings from depreciation every year? And then we have a new thing here, right? I'm going to sell it at the end of 3 years. I said 9%, right?
Tax savings? No. Did you take off your salvage value? Because you're only gonna depreciate the 30 minus the salvage value. You're gonna depreciate 24,000, 8,000 a year. You're gonna depreciate, I think it's 2,000 times 2.531. For your tax savings. Yes, because you're gonna take your value of your thing is 30,000, right? Minus your salvage value, which leaves you with 24,000. So you're gonna depreciate $8,000 a year, but your tax is 25%, so that saves you 2,000 a year times so your amount is 2,000 times the 2.531. No, I already times it times 25% because it's 8,000. You're depreciating 8,000 a year. So when you times that times 25%, 2,000 goes in there. I'm sorry.
Slow down.
Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so to figure out how much you're going to depreciate, I mean, you have your $30,000 whatever router, right? You have to subtract your salvage value to find out how much you're going to depreciate a year. So 30,000 minus the 6 that you're going to sell it for, you're going to depreciate $24,000 over the course of 3 years. So when you take that divided by 3, you get 8,000 times your tax rate is 2,000 a year. You're going to save on your taxes, but that's going to then you have to factor it.
So you take your depreciation times
Oh, the value after depreciation. You got it? Okay. Okay. It's okay.
So is the 16 grand inflow or outflow? That's coming in, right? So in today's dollars, that's worth what?
40,000.
Depreciation savings. How much am I depreciating? The full 30? No, 24 grand, right? 30 minus the salvage value. Over how many years? 3. And what's my tax rate? So I'm going to save how much a year on taxes? And then what happens in year 3? I think I can do what? Sell it. Then inflow or an outflow. How come I went to the present value of a lump sum table for that? Go ahead, Perry. It's a one-time shot.
So that's where you got that 7. So what
Yes.
From the lump sum table, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the table before that. Or no, I'm sorry. Does that say lump sum? Yeah. So 9% 3 years, because I'm only selling it once, right? So $6,000 in 3 years at 9% is worth what today? So the present value of the project itself, obviously you can see it's a positive number. 190. So using all this data, you would accept the project. If you were prioritizing it and comparing it to other potential routers or whole new lines or, then you would adjust accordingly. Pretty straightforward, or? Okay, I like it a lot too. Let's do one, well, let's see, let's do let's do one, no, let's do an IRR, and then if we have time, we'll do a net present value with uneven cash flows. So let me just say that so that you understand what I'm saying. So there's 3 methods we're looking at in this chapter, right? We looked at payback. What's payback again? It's a super quick scan. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It doesn't consider the time value of money.
It doesn't consider the time value of money. What's the math on that?
Initial investment divided by the payback period?
Divided by the, yeah, well, no, divided by how much you think you're going to get out of it every year. Initial investment divided by what? Annual, yeah, cash flow. So you might be saving some and spending some, and you put it all together, right?
Payback.
Payback period. How much am I putting in up front? I'm going to buy a Prius. Cost me 25 grand. What's the question you want to know?
Why?
So I can put a Bernie Sanders sticker on it. Because I want to save gas, right? I want to save gas. So the next question is, how much are you going to save a year on it? Well, I think my gas bill is going to go down by $8 grand a year. I mean, it doesn't make any sense here if you don't drive a lot, but in the city it makes a lot of sense.
But then wouldn't your insurance and all that go up?
Exactly, you'd have to do all that math. My increased costs are X, my decreased fuel bill is Y, net that all out. I'm going to spend 25 grand and I'm going to end up saving 6 a year. What's my payback period, just off the top of your head? Between 4 and 5 years. There you go, 4.1 or 4.2 years. Well, does that feel like a short enough time span to extract that savings? You know, may or may not to you. I don't know if I'm going to do that with my whole fleet. Okay, you get the point. Super quick scan. Then we did NPV, net present value, and we're going to also learn how to do this with uneven cash flows. In other words, I think the first year my sales are going to go up to 8,000 units, and the second year they're going to go to 11,000, and the third year to 15,000. How would that change the calculations? Would it change the first line? No. Would it change the third line?
Yes.
Really?
Well, no, because it's around.
Straight line depreciation, is that going to change? No. Is it going to change how much I'm going to sell it for at the end of 3 years? No. All it's going to do is change this number. And what's going to take the place of that one line of annuity now?
3 lines.
3 lines. A lump sum in 1 year, a lump sum in 2 years, and a lump sum in 3 years. So you can't go to the annuity table anymore, can you? Okay. So really that's it. And if we have time, we'll do a real life example. But what I want to do, and make sure we get through today so you can do your homework this weekend, is IRR. What does that stand for? Maybe I should just tell you. It is. It's not really a guessing game.
I don't like this game.
Yeah, it's not as fun. Not as fun as beer pong.
Internal rate of return.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And this is basically taking your cash flows from a project, using the tables, and determining what it's going to yield you. What is the project going to yield? And once you know what the project's going to, oh, and I'm sorry, and this is adjusted for the time value of money. Once I know what it's going to yield, what do I want to compare that to? So the project's going to yield 11.26%. Great. You've got to compare it to your cost of capital. So once you get the rate, you've got to compare it to your cost of capital. And if it's higher than your cost of capital, you're ending up ahead, right? The calculation is the exact same calculation as payback, but then you go to the tables with it. and find the I. What's the calculation for payback again? What divided by what?
Initial investment,
Investment divided by
how much you'll save.
annual cash flow. Same calculation here, but once you get the number, you go to the tables and try and figure out what I is. So let's say in this example, I'm investing $843,000 in new communications technology. I think it's going to increase my sales $155,000 a year. And my variable costs are 20%. No additional fixed costs. It's a 10-year project. My cost of capital is 9%. And my tax rate is 33%. So I'm going to let you figure out the annual cash flow, and then I'll walk you through the calculations and looking up the IRR. I'm investing $843,000 in new communications technology. I think it's going to pop my sales up $155,000 a year. My variable costs are 20%. I have no fixed costs associated with the project because it's digital technology. I'm not going to have to actually repair and maintain it. But I'm going to have to hire somebody to run it. That's the variable cost. My cost of capital is 9%. My tax rate is 33%. It is a 10-year project. You need to figure out my annual cash flow, and then we're going to throw that into our calculation. It is 9%.
No, I mean, like, what is that doing?
It's not doing anything yet, but when we figure out what this thing's returning us, we're going to compare our yield to that number.
Oh,
27,819. So I got annual cash flow of 151,819. Do I have a second on that? Sure. So what's my depreciation on an annual basis? No, it's a 10-year project, no salvage value. 84,300 was my investment. So I depreciated 84,300 a year, right? What's my tax rate? Yeah, 27,819 is my tax savings on an annual basis. 27,819. You want me to write this up here?
Splendid. 'Cause I'm just so bothered.
The salvage value in this case was 0, right? How many years is it going over? 10. So my annual depreciation is what? What's my tax rate? Yeah. $27,818, right? So is that a positive or a negative thing? Yeah, because I'm saving that on my taxes. Then how much is my cash flow going up from the increased sales? Yeah, 155,000 times 0.8 because 20% of that's going out the door to my variable costs. Right? Annual cash flow is going up 151,819. So here's your formula. Get me a number and then I'll show you how to go to the tables with it. Now you go to the present value of an annuity table and you go to the row where it has the years of the project and go over and find what I corresponds with that. So go to your present value of an annuity table because that happens every year, right? Go to how many years the project is, find that row. And then just go over and find the factor that's as close to this number as you can get. And that's approximately what the time-adjusted yield of the project is going to be. So if I go to row 10, right, and I go across it, 5 point, looks like it's closest to 12%. Between 12 and 13. So how far is 5.65 from 5.553? So that's 0.097 off. And then,
So it's close to being
0.127.
Yep.
No, I think it's closer to 13.
It's third.
Closer to 13, isn't it? Oh, no, I'm sorry, you're right. It's closer to 12%. So we could say, boy, the time adjusted yield on this project is about 12%. What am I paying for my capital? 9%. So therefore, what am I going to do? Is it a viable project? Sure. No. I mean, you can just set it up any way you want it. You've just got to come to the annual cash flow. Go ahead.
Could you go back to how you got 161?
Sure.
So off of this one, we're just comparing percents.
That's all you're doing. So Perry said to clarify, all you're doing is comparing percents.
If it's a higher percentage of your project capital, then do it.
Yep. And again, if you've got 4 projects and one's 12 and one's 14 and one's 19, all things being equal, but this is just one piece of the decision, isn't it? You have to look at the qualitative stuff too. Okay, for Monday, I know you guys wouldn't want to go the whole weekend without thinking about managerial. Chapter 13.
I'm available, Terry. I'm available. if you need me.
How much feedback?
Okay. And then
Why don't you do 13, 1, 2, and 3? And I can tell you just glancing at this that they're not giving you tax rates, so they're not expecting that you do the depreciation. If you don't have a tax rate, 13, 1, 2, and 3.
that
They're-
might be good.
I'm
for me to
reviewing.
back up that.
No, just in the regular page 609. They're not giving you a tax rate, so you can't do the depreciation, can you?
That might be good.
But really, you can't ignore it. I mean, in the real world, because it's a significant piece. Okay. Happy weekend.